Good morning, everyone. So let's start with introduction. So my name is Chidam. I'm a principal solution architect in Elastic, and I'm supporting some of the financial sector industries in the strategic accounts in Singapore. And today with me, also we have Jan. So Jan, over to you.
Yeah, hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jan. I'm with Babel Street, and I run the CPAC region for our Rosette product line. Rosette has Elasticsearch plugins for anything text analytics and fuzzy name matching. I hope you're feeling great. I hope you're feeling fantastic. We have very interesting topics to talk about today: anti-money laundering, screening, AI. So without further ado, let's jump in. And Chidam, if you can tell them a bit more about the agenda.
Sure, Jan. Okay, so we have been talking about name screening and all those things just now Jan also mentioned, right? So name screening is something which is a fundamental control in anti-money laundering, right? And countering the financing of terrorism, like anti-money laundering CFT framework of financial institutions. Right? Some of the financial institutions, they screen the names of potential and existing customers and the relevant parties to identify the association and sanctions. So they typically perform name screening during customer onboarding, periodic know your customer. So we always fill out the KYC documents in our banks, and ongoing batch screening and transaction processing. Right. So today, let's talk about the challenges of name screening and existing methods, and also how Rosette and Elastic's hybrid screening methods increase the accuracy levels and the technology adaptability to comply with regulations. So, there are two partners here. So obviously there is what is the Elasticsearch, right? So Elasticsearch, where we talk about the platform for enterprise search, right? And we expect to be able to find the information we need when we need in real time. And the information we are looking for, it's like everywhere. It lives on website, it's in application, in knowledge base, on file sharing platforms, and more. The Elasticsearch platform is able to easily and efficiently connect people and teams with content that matters. And so we'll talk about how Elasticsearch can efficiently be the data search platform and works together with the other best-in-class AI-fueled fuzzy name matching plugin for Elasticsearch, which is Rosette. And so that is what we are going to discuss and see today. All right. So Jan, what is the biggest challenges that you keep hearing from financial sector industries? Can you
absolutely.
take us there?
Yeah, so the most common feedback that we hear is keeping track with everything that's happening. So if you can skip to the next slide, it's, there are the first one that's the most important, obviously, is keeping track with regulations. They are always evolving. They are absolutely necessary. We've listed a few examples in the slide that you can see right after. We're not going to go over each one of them. The goal of this slide, Chidam, if you can go on on the next slide, is to really show you that wherever you're sitting, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in Singapore, whether you're in Malaysia or Japan, the goal for regulators is to tell you that you need to strengthen your process. You need to have more robust platforms. You need to bridge the gap if you identify flaws or if you see that your systems needs to be enhanced. And you should not be scared of implementing new technology. Financial crime doesn't wait. You don't have 5 years. Things need to be fixed now. And that's what regulators and central banks are expecting from you. The other things that we know you have to keep track of is technology and vendors, and you are not expected to become AI experts, right? This is our role to help you, to educate you. Everyone knows about AI, but it doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. You need to understand what's the potential of AI, how it can be applied in your environment, in your system. But you also need to understand it doesn't do everything and anything. It's got limits. So we need to manage your expectations so you know what you are going to be getting and you understand what is available out there. Regulations are evolving, technology is evolving. Obviously, we understand that you don't want to reap and replace things that you've invested in terms of money, in terms of resources. You want to make that process better, and it is possible. The challenge is obviously in everyday operations. You want to be able to accelerate and automate any manual operations. And you want to do that, but you don't want to take more risks. So you want to make better decisions faster, but without increasing, obviously, the risk that you're taking. So, understanding the technology out there, the limits, the possibility, and how it can fit into your existing environment. So new regulations, new challenges, and also new reports and new numbers. So are there any new some figures that you want to share with us, Chidam?
Yeah, definitely, Jan. So if you look at, if you put aside the clinch terminology and move past the macro trends, there are some real challenges out there, the challenges that every business is facing today. And if you look at the numbers, that 85% of consumers prefer brands with advanced identity verifications. And 78% of compliance officers believe fraud prevention can be a strategic differentiator. And global fines in 2022 alone in the banking, it is about $2 billion. So that's scary, right? So the number that scares me is like 75% of organizations, their targets of fraud attack in 2020 alone, right? So there are a lot of different, contributors, like bad actors are leveraging more sophisticated tools for facilitate fraud attacks. The expansion of payment types has increased blind spots and created challenges for fraud teams. And also the customer habits is constantly changing. That makes it more challenging to recognize anomalies and read quickly. So fraud continues to be a headache for financial institutions and their clients. And if you look at, the cost, this is the cost of doing nothing, right? So we know that the fraud is happening. And if we don't do anything, if we don't act now, and this is what the cost of impact of non-compliance and because of the fraud. And I have pasted one of the report from the MAS in Singapore for the fines that for financial institutions for breaching AML laws. This is quite a recent report. And so if you look at the numbers, Singapore is about $3.8 million, the fines levied by the MAS against these banks in Singapore for violating anti-terrorism financing and AML laws, right? And okay, so I read this, the MAS document on the name screening regulation, right? So Jen, can you share me more on how name screening process can play a vital role in the whole fraud detection and compliance?
Yes, absolutely. And just for everyone here, this actually is extracted directly from the Monetary Authorities of Singapore MAS screening guidelines that was published last year. So this is a very typical screening process that you have at onboarding, transaction screening, etc. But where the bottleneck is on steps 3 and on step 4. Where is the value for your AML officers is on step 5. This is where you want them to investigate real alerts. You don't want them going through a list of irrelevant results. So number 3 and number 4 are the steps that need to be fixed right now, because this is where you waste time, this is where you waste money, and this is where your resources do not feel they're being valued, because this is not where their skill set lies. So we'll talk about why name screening is that complicated. Screening challenges, obviously, as soon as you have to deal with names, as soon as you have to identify someone's identity, then a solution like this is needed. And Chidam said it, it's at onboarding, it's at transaction screening, it's KYC, ongoing KYC. So it's not because your customer today is not a criminal that he might or she might not be a criminal tomorrow. You have to keep up with this. This is very important. So one example that we're giving you is, for example, Apple. Is to show you that it happens to everyone, and everyone has this image of Apple being very innovative, the best out there. And for those of you who do not know Apple, it's a little company in the Silicon Valley, but you can see that it actually happens to them as well. They onboarded on the App Store a company that was actually listed on the OFAC list. And the OFAC list, for those of you who do not know, is basically a list of people or organization you shouldn't do business with. And in that case, what happened, and you see it right here, it failed to match a company because of an uppercase, lowercase issue. And this minor variation cost them a little bit less than 500K. This is huge. And Apple are not the only ones. There are plenty of examples out there. in the news every day. So you can see on this slide that we talk about all the different banks, insurances. It's really not just a singular and isolated problem. It is a community, it is an industry issue. And the question you should be asking yourself is, what you have today, right now, are you sure that it is the best that you can do? Because if you know it could be better, then you need to fix it, because you don't want to be in my next slide and with your company's name or your bank's name added there. So why are names so difficult? Well, first, they're the mistakes that you and I make. We're humans, I might be typing your name, I'm going to make a typo, or, your Chidam has quite a complicated name. So imagine the ways I can actually make a mistake when writing it down. Or he's going to tell me his name, I'm going to write it down phonetically, how I think it should be written, and I'm going to get it wrong. And it happens. And there's also the computer, what we call generated complexity, where in that case, it's the computer which will automatically modify your name because the format, because the length or whatever is just not currently supported. So my last name, Le Garrec, very classic French name. There's a white space in the end. Le is not my middle name. My whole last name is Le Garrec. But when I was living in the US, they didn't like that because this is not something that you see. So they will glue it together. And sometimes they will keep the uppercase and sometimes they will keep the lowercase. So a simple name, as you can see, can be registered many different ways. And the problem is you have no control over that. You don't know when people make mistakes. You don't know when your computer is going to do this. This is why you need a solution that understands all these different variations that can happen. And then you have the language, linguistic specificities. In certain languages, in certain cultures, you go by with your nickname more often than your first name. So you have the example here of William and Will and Bill, because maybe against something, someone made a mistake and entered the nickname or entered a title instead of the real full name that's written on your passport. So all of these are examples of how names can be altered, can be modified, and how it impacts your screening and the accuracy of your results. In our part of the world, because Chidam and I are both in Singapore, so we're here, is that obviously not only do you have complexity with languages, we all have different, we speak different languages, but here you also have different scripts, whereas Western Europe will not deal that much with that problem. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm moving to Japan and I open a bank account, and for whatever reason, I decide to live a life of crime right now. So I'm being called by the government and they're going to take my name, translate it in Japanese script, and this is now the way my name is written on an international watch list. So I get, they kick me out of the country, I decide to move somewhere else, and I need to open a new bank account. When the officer is going to do the screening, they're going to take the same name they see on my passport and see if it's that way it's stored anywhere on a watch list on the database. But if my name is written in Japanese, there's a high chance you're going to miss it. Or if my name is in Arabic or in Chinese. And that's also the complexity. The expression lost in translation isn't there, just like that. It's true. You are going to be losing accuracy if you have to translate every name. The best way to boost the accuracy of your screening engine is to make sure that it processes the name natively. And this is something we wanted to share with you today, is the common name screening methods that either people build themselves or that third-party solutions actually have. And I'm going to go over them just to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So the edit distance is like basic step, name matching 101. It's not particularly smart. You're basically going to decide, okay, if this name and that name have over 2 characters, difference, then you decide if it's a hit or not. So it's super quick to implement, very easy to explain, but obviously it takes no consideration about linguistic specificities and differences, and it only works in actually, Latin languages. The list method, this is one you would appreciate why it takes a lot of time and resources. Let's say you have 1 million customers. You're going to take these 1 million names, and then you're going to say, well, for Jeanne Le Garrec, these are the 6 ways I think her name can be misspelled and can be modified. And then you take Chidam's name and you'll say, oh, his name, maybe there's 15 different way his name is going to be modified. Think about the fact that you have to do it for 1 million names. Think about how your index is going to be, right? It's going to be resource intensive. It takes a lot of time. And the big question is, what happens if you have something that's outside that list of rules that you have defined? So this one is a bit more dangerous because it doesn't take into account things you didn't think of. The common key method, this is for very fast execution, because basically you're going to find an accelerated way to process names. So you're going to say, my first name is Jan. You're going to say, every name that starts with a J, it's going to be represented by now this key. And this will enable you to obviously process things faster. But you're actually favoring speed over precision. And then the Levenstein distance. This is a very common one as well. A lot of people tell us about it. And it's like a more intelligent distance. It includes some fuzzy matches, but actually I've learned this week that Levenstein distance actually was brought to the world in the 1960s. And we're in 2023, which means there are better solutions now that can actually take more things into account. And this is why you see regulators and central banks telling you, you have to use solutions that use AI and that use statistical models, because that way you are going away from rules-based methods, which are the first 4, and you take more things into account. So this is very important. And this is, a complicated, it can look scary. Again, we don't expect you to be AI and linguistics experts, but let us help you. You don't have to take that journey alone. We help to make sure that you can comply easily to regulation and you have the best technology available to you and the best fit to your existing environment. So the best practice is an AI-fueled hybrid method or model. What does that mean? Well, the 5 models that we've seen before, the 5 different techniques, it's not all black or white. There are some nuances depending on the data, depending on your risk appetite, depending on what you're searching for. And this is what the next gen screening engines actually look for. It's going to adapt based on what you have. And you're in luck, because this is exactly what Babel Street with Elasticsearch actually gives you, an AI-fueled hybrid system that you can easily integrate into your environment. So the common pain point, and we've talked about it at the beginning, is actually reducing those false positives that take a lot of time. And if you take transaction screening, you don't have just one name to screen. You have the payer, the payee, who's receiving the money at the corporate level and who's sending it. So there's at least 4 names that you want to screen. So if you get 90% false positive, this is a nightmare. So you need a system that's smarter than that. And Rosette has what we call a precision pass. Most systems today, they're going to look at all the potential candidates and say, well, that pretty much looks like what you're looking for, and that's what it's going to show you. And that's where you get a lot of false positives. Rosette is going to say, let me look at that list. Okay, this one is disqualified. This is a man's name and you were looking for a woman's name. This is a much more common first name and a very uncommon last name. So I'm not going to be processing that name the same way. This is Italian. This is French. Please don't process a French name the same way you'll process a Spanish name, for example. 2 important features or functionalities is the threshold definition and the settings. Out of the box, it works very well, but there's always room for improvement. And also, if you have a branch in Vietnam and one in the Philippines and one in Singapore, you might want to apply different models, different rules, or different settings to each one of these departments. And this is actually possible. It's not because Bank A sets a threshold at 72 that you should apply the same. The input that you're giving Rosette and Elastic are names. The output is a score from 0 to 1, and 1 is an exact match. It is you to determine what makes sense for you, so you get the perfect balance between, catching all the hits and also reducing your false positives. Another thing that helps you reduce the false positive is being able to take into account more than just the name. But for that, it really depends on the type of data that you have, the data provider that you're choosing. Obviously, if all databases were perfect and everything was curated, it would be great. But this is utopia. We're in the real world where sometimes you have just the first name, sometimes you have a bit more, you have an address, you have a date of birth. These are different attributes that can be taken into consideration into the overall score that you're getting. So this will help reduce your false positives as well. And obviously, if you're, in 2023, you're talking about machine learning models, deep learning models, and this is something that also help with your false negatives. Because when the false positive are a pain point, the false negative is where it's going to cost you. This is the one where you're missing hits. That's the one where you're gonna lose customer trust. You're gonna lose shareholders, investors' trust. It can ruin your career if you actually onboard too many wrong people. So this is really the one that's going to cost you money because you're going to be fined if you onboard the wrong people. And that's where your system needs to understand the different variations of a name. It needs to understand languages. It has to have been trained on data sets that are representative of that particular language. And we've seen too many times providers saying, oh, we support all the languages in the world. We train it on 2 million names. Great, but you mixed everything up. You can't do that. The cross script. This is the one where a lot of hits are missed because it's the Japanese, Chinese, Latin script example I was giving you. Maybe a name was translated the wrong way and you'll miss it. This is why you want a solution that can that can look at the native script, at the native name to increase the accuracy. The threshold, as I mentioned, and the tuning helps with both false positive and false negative, because if there's something that you see all the time, that makes sense technically. You understand why this name is here, but maybe you can say, well, I approved it, I reviewed it. This should always be, disqualified, or on the contrary, should always be at the top of my list. And the last, but which is also one of the most important points, it's adaptation to the new requirements. It's ease of integration. So this is where obviously when you have a new regulation coming in, you don't want to be in a situation where you have to call your vendor saying, well, something's up, do I have to pay for more professional services? Oh, you need someone to come on site. This is not scalable, this is not sustainable, and this just doesn't work anymore in today's world. Things are going too fast. You need something that you can tune, you re-upload your Elasticsearch index, and bam, you're done. Another thing that's important is also understanding the results that you're getting from your screening engine, not only to refine the tuning, but also so that you can report back to your management, to your sponsors, and also to the regulators. AI doesn't have to be a black box anymore. I can say it again for the people in the back. AI doesn't have to be a black box anymore. You can actually understand the models that were used by the solution, how the name was exactly parsed, so you can be confident on the accuracy of the screening and why it works for you. So now that we've talked about how you can use solutions like Rosette's fuzzy name matching to give you peace of mind, and this is a joke, you'll tell me if it works or not, but it's basically we're the ibuprofen of your AML and compliance headache, right? We are here to give you that peace of mind so you can trust your system and you can make sure that your AML officers spend time on what they should be spending time on. But you also need to make sure that the underlying technology is secure, is robust, is scalable, and which is why we developed the Elasticsearch plugins, because we believe Elastic is the best tool for all the compliance teams around the world. And Chidam is going to let you, going to prove to you that what I'm saying is right. Chidam,
I mean, that's true, Jen. And obviously, thanks for walking through the screening process. I mean, there are a lot of information that we understand about how the name screening is done, how the name matching is being, and how it's complicated for the officers to have the name matching and screening, right? But obviously, when it comes to the data, so everything is data, right? So when it comes to the data scalability is important, right? Because if somebody cannot search for a particular names or cannot search for data in a lightning speed, is going to be a problem, right? So you need to have that speed, scale, and relevance, obviously, as part of your entire process and entire technology standards. So that is where Elastic comes in to help and complement with Rosette to achieve that scalability, to achieve that resilience, and with the speed. Right? And Elasticsearch is built upon the great work of the Lucene project by providing a simple way to ensure that data was resilient and you could scale to new data volumes. Right? And product catalogs were generally small data set that periodically underwent change, for example, like a new season, and it more of searches than inserts and updates, right? And if you look at in terms of the scalability and longer term retentions, because these are the data where you cannot just keep it and destroy it after a few months. It has to stay longer, right? The data retention is important. So when you talk about the data retention, then obviously the cost comes into the mind, right? Because if I'm going to ingest all the data and if I want to retain it for let's say for compliance, I need to retain for 7 years or even for 1 year, it's going to be a cost, the underlying resources, the storage and all those things. And at the same time, I should have it turn on searchable. If data is not searchable, then it's of no use for me. So the elastic technologies like index lifecycle management helps to retain the data for longer term, at the same time in a smaller footprint and in a searchable format. So that kind of like a technology where it can able to do the auto tiering, and you can store the data as a searchable snapshot in a frozen tier. And obviously, it's not just only for one platform. It can be stored on multiple like a S3 object storage or even in the cloud platforms. Right? So that kind of like the data tiering and the data retention and the speed of search is provided by Elasticsearch as the underlying data store for Rosette. Okay, let me just take a step from transition screening, which Rosette, Janice explained about the transition screening, the name matching, all those things. But that obviously links back to the 75% organization that are targeted for fraud attack in 2020 that we shared in the previous slides. So that drives for the transaction monitoring, right? So let me share with you some about the transaction monitoring and the drivers behind the transaction monitoring. So now you understand, like, understand the state of business, right? So Rosette can help you with the transaction screening, the underlying stack like Elasticsearch can help you in the transaction monitoring. Let me tell you how. So for the business to understand the state of the business, to have the impact analysis during the service outage, so you need to have kind of like the value to provide the end-to-end visibility across service components, right? Like stitching of data across business and IT to provide the impact analysis, work together with the banks, existing tools for advanced insights, and also the data-driven platform across the banks, right? And the next one, if you look at the data to detect abnormal behavior for both business and IT, because we cannot separate business and IT as two separate challenges or two separate components. Business and IT is always together, right? And using the machine learning to provide the advanced insights based on business real-world data. So it's impossible for somebody to sit and monitor continuously on the screens, whether if there is any anomaly detected, if there is something which is not right. So elastic technologies like machine learning, which supports both unsupervised and supervised machine learning. So and the learning provides high accuracy alerts. So what is unsupervised machine learning is something that we don't develop any data models or data models. So the machine learning auto learns based on the pattern, based on the how the data is being accessed, and if there is any pattern where, for example, if a person is going to an ATM and he fetches money from that particular ATM center, right? And if he is going to fetch if he's going around to multiple ATMs and he's going to withdraw cash on the same day, there's something which is abnormal, right? And so that kind of like a behavior, it can able to detect, and it can able to immediately, the machine learning can provide the highest accuracy alerts with the machine learning anomaly detections. And no more static thresholds. Because the thresholds, it cannot be like if this particular person goes to 5 ATMs in a day or more than 5 ATMs in a day, alert. So that's a static alert. It cannot be a static alert thresholds anymore. So it has to be a smart baseline. It has to auto learn. And it don't have to be a data scientist to use the machine learning. That's more important, right? Because if I want to be a data scientist to model my machine learning for every single use case, then it's going to be a challenge. And so it has to be unsupervised and supervised machine learning that should provide the highest accuracy alerts. And apart from that, to detect the fraud attempts, to protect against the reputations and financial risk, and to stay compliant against regulatory policies. So some of the values that Elastic can provide is like detection of fraud activities. For example, like understanding, I just explained the frequency usage of ATM over a short period of time, to detect multiple withdrawal around a close vicinity, or alert on testing of withdrawal or near thresholds. So these are some of the things which Elastic and this security and observability under the same platform, it can integrate to the bank risk assessment on a GRC platform, right? And if you look at the Elastic security, so the data is important, right? So the data sources can be from the user, from the network activity, from the endpoint, or from the code repository, or even from the connected devices and the transaction data, account activity. So all this data, so it will be ingested to the Elastic Stack, and the normalization is happening at the Elastic Stack. And once the data is there, and the Elastic Stack helps to detect, search, analyze, and investigate in a fast and scalable manner. And then it helps to visualize along with the Rosette plugin to do the name screening and name matching with the fuzzy algorithm. And it helps to alert whether you want to alert to the relevant SOC or you want to alert to the relevant fraud detection teams to quickly action upon it. So this is the complete the process, the technology involved behind the data ingestion is happening and the data normalization happening within the Elastic Stack, and then the data visualization is happening at the front end. And the Elastic Rosette is a plugin which is part of the Elasticsearch. And on the unsupervised machine learning, which I was talking about, so this is something which is important, right? Because like I mentioned, that it's impossible for me to detect or look for anomaly in all the services, because nowadays the applications are being developed with the microservices with the distributed architectures. And I should be able to have a systems where I can able to identify anomalies in the amount of like a transaction volume and value, or a kind of like a population analysis, or rare detectors, or behavior analysis. So all these things are important, and the machine learning, the out-of-the-box machine learning helps to achieve get those informations across. And having those informations, and most important thing is to have a unified visibility across the enterprise. So the data can be coming from different teams, but I need to have a unified visibility. For example, I have just given in a FI, like a consumer fraud or claims or call center, I can have a different data ingested and processed, but I can have a common dashboard where, for example, like a fraudulent claim investigations. So I can able to compare and correlate the incident, what happened at that point in time, whether the claim volumes is increasing, is how much is the amount, and what is the investigations. All those things I can able to correlate, and I can able to analyze in that particular point in time. And that's very important to have that, to identify the fraud in a real time, right? So that gives the flexibility and the power for the organizations to readily for analysis of the ingest and all relevant data types and data analysis in one place. So all with the machine learning and with the analytics on the free text and NER, and it can be accessible by the enterprise. Some of the use cases in the financial services. So if you look at the modernized transaction search, so where they create the robust digital transaction search and tracking of clients and employees guided by the machine learning. And there are other use cases like advanced operational intelligence. So building the entire AIOps kind of like a structure that includes your logs, metrics, traces for the applications, and also the business data. And personalization interactions. So with the new development of the generative AI, so you can also bring your private data, and at the same time use Elasticsearch can bridge with the generative AI to get that kind of like a human interaction conversation to provide the personalized interaction search advising. And so Elastic Security today, we have the Elastic AI Assistant is kind of like a chat interface, which is already GA, and you can just use that to interface to with the human language. And on that, the emergence of the data intelligence platform, there are multiple next-gen function use cases like Customer 360. You can use it for API monetization tracking or blockchain provenance, or even like a loan application or lifecycle tracking or fraud detection and preventions. So all those things we can able to power on top of the Elasticsearch platform, and the name screening and matching can be achieved with the highest accuracy with Rosette Elasticsearch plugin. So that kind of like give you an overview of how the platform is and how it looks like. And there are more and more advanced technologies being developed, like native AML, the platform moving towards stateless or serverless architecture, and also to have kind of like geospatial and vector capabilities. So today you already have the geospatial map out of the box, where you can even plot the data points with the map. And there are a lot of out-of-the-box connectors and open API. And it can be deployed on public cloud or hybrid or even on premises. So with that, I will switch on to the next. So we have 20 minutes left. So Jen, can we show them some demo
Sure.
on how the Rosette integration works?
Yes, absolutely. I'll show you that what we've been talking about actually works. But yes, it's important to realize that, in compliance, obviously there are different departments. Financial crime is not going anywhere. So you need systems like this for fraud detection, fraud monitoring, and it happens at very different levels of your stack, of your organization. So thank you for that. So let me share my screen and hopefully it will work, because we tested and it worked. So share screen, desktop, share, and you should be able to see my screen, correct? Okay.
Yeah, you can see.
So I talked about at the beginning about my name and how I'm very sad that people keep writing it wrong. So I'll show you how can Rosette help in that case. So Jeanne Lagareg, as I mentioned, French name. What happens if every time I book a flight, every time I book a hotel, it goes, oh no, her name's really Jeanne Lagareg, written that way. So this is, so you do understand that we are a plugin. So we're not an end-to-end solution. We're not replacing your case management system, your AML solution. It's really something that will plug into it to make the results better. But we had to build something to show you how it works. So this is more of our evaluation demo tool, but it's not what you'll be having in production with the Elasticsearch plugin. So this is really to show you. So in that case, you can see that despite the white space being missing, we still have the 0.9898 score. And at the beginning, I was saying it parses the name differently. Well, that's what I wanted to show you. It says, okay, Jeanne, I understand that this is a quite common first name. So the weighting that it will have on the overall score is actually less than the last name that is actually, more uncommon. So in that case, it's saying there's a match. And in that case, they're saying there's a potential fuzzy match here. So it would be the same if I put the uppercase, the score is still about the same. So now what happens when you use a smart system? So Jeanne Lagareg, I don't know what he's done, but he's bad and he's on the watch list. And Jeanne is actually pretty close in terms of phonetic matching. If you ask Rosette to compare the two, it's going to actually see that this should not be qualified. This is actually rejected by the system because it only has, let's say 29% match. But why? Because you can see that John and Jeanne, it has an HMM match. So there is a match here. And Lagareg and Lagareg is spelled exactly the same way. So the solution is telling you again, no problem, there's a match with these two parts of the names. The explanation is in the training data that Rosette has been using to become better and more accurate, because it knows that, there's a gender correction model in it where it says that Jeanne is a feminine name, that John is masculine. Therefore, it applied a gender correction override where it says in that case, no, this should not be a match. And this is something you can play around with, and do as many variations as you want. I have another example uploaded there because I did tell you about the complexity of matching names in different scripts. So in that case, I actually have a name written in Arabic and a name written it's in Latin in its English form. And you can see again how it has basically put the name here in Latin languages directly. It did not store the name anywhere in Latin script. It's just the way the name is being processed and the different weightings. So the more tokens, or the more, if you have a lot of parts in the last name, you would have as many rectangles, as you have parts in the name. I can show you an example in Chinese. So I preloaded that one. So as you can see, the score is already there. So kind of teaser alert, right? You can already see the match, but even though it's written in Chinese script here and in English there, we still are able to match the two. And this is really what makes a difference. I've also told you about the fact that we can process people's name, but you obviously work with companies' name and organizations. And these are names that you should be able to screen as well. And so it's the same thing, the variations and things like that. Obviously, they're also supported for organization name matching. We do fuzzy date matching. We do fuzzy date address and date matching as well, location. But in that case, I want to show you how it works in real life, because IBM and Big Blue, we actually taught the tool to also recognize what we call real world data and matching. So in that case, it knows, even though there's just the B in common, or actually the I, there are some letters in common, but that even though it's written differently, it's different ways, it is still matching. So test it with your tool. Does it work today? But this is something that Rosette is able to do. So this was really a very very quick demo, 3-minute demo of how names are parsed. You can obviously do one name versus one name, because at onboarding, sometimes you just want the person's ID and match it against the name on a utility bill or another bank account statement. You can do that. But where Elasticsearch and Rosette and where the magic happens is really when you have to match one name against millions of names. And that's where accuracy is absolutely critical and key.
Yeah, that is a fantastic demo. I'm more curious, probably the audience might have the similar questions. So you show the demo with the different scripts, and then so how many languages do you currently support?
So we support about 23 different languages right now. We keep adding languages as we have customers requesting them, or market trend. So this is something that we are continuously working on. This is our flagship product. We have 4 releases a year, and obviously new languages coming. What's interesting to know about, again, for Southeast Asia, or Asia, is that we support languages like Burmese, Vietnamese, Thai, Korean, Japanese, so all the Chinese simplified and traditional. So if you're in Hong Kong or if you're in Taiwan, obviously you have traditional Chinese there. Well, if a name is stored on a watch list on simplified Chinese, you'll still be able to match the two as well, because the fuzzy name matching algorithms works with simplified and traditional Chinese as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Jan, for that. All right. So, in summary, if you are seeing that how the architecture is combined with the Elastic and Rosette search platform. So, Jan, do you want to take through on the summary?
Yeah, so I'm not technical at all, so I can only tell you what the solution engineers have been saying is that Rosette and the plugin for Elasticsearch, it's so quick and easy. It's one line of code and you're done. And that's really what it is. Rosette sits between the indexing and the querying, because obviously we need to understand what you're searching for, but we also need access. We need to be able to read all the list of names that you have. So that's where we sit in. So we plug with Elasticsearch, and because we're an engine and we don't have the UI, basically our customers consume the output that we provide, visualize the result the way they want to. Some customers, they just plug in within their existing environment. So basically the AML officer sees the same thing as before, just better results. And some banks, some insurance companies, they want to build their own UI. And that's why they can also use Kibana and build the UI that makes sense for them for that particular task. That's kind of what I have to say on that slide, because I would not be able to go further than that.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I can touch on a little bit on the technical side. So I mean, Elastic, what are the data that we write to or ingest? So the data is ingested as a data, and is created as an index and stored in Elastic as a common common schema, right? We call it as Elastic Common Schema, ECS. And that's how between the ingestions, the index and the query. So Rosette sits in as a plugin, and when there is the kind of like a keys which is created when there's a rescore query is happening. So when there's a matching is happening, it goes and check against. So that is where the magic is done by the Rosette plugin there, right? And you get the score output and you get the result output. And all those, the index, the search is all stored in Elastic Stack, right? So that's a stack that you can see. Obviously the stack has a cross solution pillars, like it can able to do with the Elasticsearch, enterprise search, observability, and security, all in a single stack.
And we couldn't end without telling you some of the success stories of joint customers that we have. I mentioned at the beginning, we really encourage our customers when they need fuzzy name matching technology for their processes to really use Elasticsearch and Rosette, because there are some features you only get by combining the two technologies. And you can see here 3 of our customers, and we didn't choose them randomly. It's because they actually emphasize the different impacts that we have on different tasks. So the first one, which I think you got the point, reducing false positive. So Dogs has been able to see a reduction of 75% in their false positive. So this is huge. We have another customer of ours. They said, yes, you are reducing false positives, but where it helped me is because you were able to reduce the manual operations, what people had to do all the time manually, by 25%. And then the last one, which is one of my favorite ones, is that they're basically saying, yes, you're great, you got great performance, great accuracy, it's a very efficient solution, but where you help me make a difference is actually on making me focus on a better customer experience for my end user. And that's where, in a world where digital banking, digital insurance is coming up, online payments has to be very fast. You need to make sure that these are good experiences for your customers, because this is how they're going to stay with you. And you absolutely want to retain customers and not see them go into different banks. And that goes back to, it's basically closing the loop to one of the first slides we showed. And Chidam was touching base on the reports where they said, for end users, for customers, how banks, insurances, are complying with the regulations is a key differentiator, and they're going to look into that. So help us, let us help you make sure you retain your customer. You can make your team can spend more time on high valued and high skilled tasks. And if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer any of them, whether it's Elastic or Rosette, or even some of the use cases we've been working on, not just in Southeast Asia, but around the globe. This is a partnership that's been going on for 8 years. We're very excited about it, and we want to continue. We want to see it grow. So we'll open the floor to questions.
All right, thanks Jen and Chidam for the really wonderful presentation there. So yeah, we are open for Q&A now. If you have any questions, just type them in the Q&A panel, in the box below there. It seems like we have one question here. The question is on what are the best practices that you can share to tune the engine?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one that we get very often, because obviously everyone's data is different. So it's not like we have a manual where we say, well, this is exactly how you have to tune it. So you definitely have to test it. And one of the Match Studio that I was showing, this is a new feature that we brought in, which people's mind are blown away when they see it, because you basically upload your data and the AI will give you some recommendations on the best thresholds, to choose to find the right balance between recall and precision. So best practices, we have, a few videos on our website, but it's really for you to test the solution, working with our teams that can guide you on, based on your data, based on what you want to see, based on your risk appetite. These are the little tweaks that you might want to consider.
Thank you. It looks like we have another question here. What do you think is the best way to compare your solution with the current one that I have?
For on the Rosette side, it's obviously we encourage you to test it for sure. So the best way is to prepare what we call a golden data set. So it's, you have already annotated it in the sense that these are all the names that you have in your index. These are the variations that you're going to be testing. And these are your answers. What is the correct answer? And once you have this, you basically run these examples into Rosette, see which score you have out of the box. We've talked a lot about the tuning, which is also a key differentiator, but 75% of our customers actually don't touch the tuning because it works very well out of the box like that. So once you have the scores that you have for each of the variations and tests that you had prepared, do the same thing with your existing solution. Do the same test, do the same examples, see what score you're getting, and then you'll get and you'll see which one does better, keeping in mind that even a 10% reduction in false positive means you can already be saving money and time. So it's always time as well.
Of course, time is money.
And if you have any comments, something that you thought was very interesting point or number that we shared, don't hesitate to put it on the chat as well.
Looks like we don't have any other questions for today, but thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And
thank you so much.
Thank Jen, thank you Chidam for the insightful presentation, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chidam. Thanks, Emily. Bye.
Bye.